Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm with Ursula Bielski, who's joined me from the United States. She's flown over to do this special presentation regarding our work on the recent M.R.James documentary entitled The Haunting of M.R.James. The principal purpose of the documentary was to examine whether or not M.R.James actually believed in the paranormal, and equally at the same time look at the interpretations by two famous directors who both produced shows written by M.R.James and filmed on locations which may not necessarily be genuine to where the stories were originally based, but from their mind's eye they were able to recreate faithfully the landscape that M.R.James would have approved with his work. And the interesting part, of course, it took us all over Norfolk and Suffolk and also down into Essex. There was one scene that we wanted to film inside a library which would have been something familiar to the period of M.R.James, and we found that in the town of Morden in Essex, which is the Plume Library. And what a fantastic location that was.
That was really a treat.
And we also filmed at two other locations, the Martello Tower in Aldborough and also an old rectory in Norfolk, both of which were owned by the Landmark Trust. So we were able to get, if you like, a round robin, a feel of what M.R.James was about. We were adding substance to the legend of this great man. And without giving too much away, I'm just going to ask Ursula her experiences and what we had there, the fun times that we had. We actually came down in April last year. From my point of view, it was extremely cold, bitterly cold. And when we went to the Martello Tower, it was even worse, wasn't it? But you must admit, what a perfect location. I mean, we were using it as a base to live in and also as a filming set. And the building was enveloped for most of the time by
very, very heavy fog.
And we thought that was a bonus. We thought, great, we got a fog around the building. But when we went out to film at Dunwich and elsewhere, guess what we had? Even more fog. So it actually created a natural, perfect landscape to be able to convey the whole ethos of what M.R.James was all about, just by looking at the landscape upon which we were filming. And it was tremendously good fun. I actually wrote the script for this production. It took me, I think, the best part of 2 months. But why not tell them originally what we were planning to do? Because this, if you like, grew out of an idea, didn't it?
I can't even remember what we were originally trying to do. I remember when we first got started in the idea of M.R.James. It was strange. It was like, I think we both became obsessed with A Warning to the Curious at the same time, independently of each other. And one day we were talking, or I think you posted a link to, one of the readings of it on YouTube or something. And I was like, whoa, I've been listening to this story or reading the story every single day for weeks. Like, to that point, I was obsessed with it to that point. And
there you are, and this is in Chicago.
This was in Chicago, yeah, in Illinois, in the States. And I had gotten into my head that I wanted to come here to Aldborough, and I wanted to walk in the tracks of those scenes that James had written.
And by coming here, you actually, in your mind at least, you put flesh to it.
Yeah, I had to come here. And just that idea that I decided I was going to fly over here to England, and I was going to come here to Aldborough, and I was going to walk through the churchyard and take that path to where the crown was supposedly buried, and to find all these locations and all the places along the sea.
But also feeling that you're walking in the same footsteps, as M.R.James.
Yeah. And so that was my plan, just to come over here and see these places and walk in these footsteps of his characters. And then out of that grew this entire documentary.
I think what basically happened, we both, she mentioned she was coming over to England, and I said, let's shoot something on M.R.James, and it was going to be a fun shoot. It wasn't intended to be any form of major production.
Yeah.
This was going to be a memory, an aid memoir of your visit to England.
Yeah.
It wasn't intended for any particular audience. It was just going to be a fun shoot. But in order for me to do that, I had to sit down and write out a few notes. Well, a few notes went into reams of paper.
Yeah.
And within a couple of months, I had a really thick and heavy script.
Which you've sent to me via upload something
Yep,
program,
and of course,
I was like,
Ursula,
what is going on here?
Well, you added to it as well. Ursula,
Yeah.
I asked Ursula to check the papers to make sure that everything was okay, or if there's something which perhaps should be clarified, or something which had been omitted to be included into the story. So that's basically what I did. And then, of course, I thought, if we're going to go to this length, why shouldn't we get someone in who we know is a very professional cameraman and a much loved director of film in the form of Jason Figgis. Now, Jason was a little bit surprised when I first spoke to him because it came out of the blue. He already had other arrangements to do other shoots, and he asked why we didn't come to him much sooner. But then I had to explain to Jason that this started off originally as a fun piece. It wasn't intended to grow in the manner that it did.
Or
and
to
it
be
certainly
any sort
grew.
of scholarly or research-oriented kind of
Absolutely.
thing.
I mean, it became very organic, didn't it? And so as a consequence of that, Jason agreed to come over and film it. So Jason joined us and we hired a vintage car for the shoot. Overall, everybody that we dealt with while we were shooting, and that goes from the guy who was chauffeuring the car to the woman who owned the car, to the Landmark Trust whose properties we went to, everybody was absolutely marvellous, and they were very helpful and very cooperative. So it was a shoot that I thoroughly enjoyed doing, but it was hard work. We had, I think 11 days to complete the entire project.
11 days.
And we're looking at a lot of paper to go
and
through.
a lot of costume changes.
Oh, absolutely. I actually, if you can see here on this clip, you can see me dressed in Edwardian clothing. And that I actually put together. It was if you like, a facsimile copy of a costume that I saw online. And I was able to put the costume together, believe it or not, by buying goods from eBay, which included the jacket, the trousers, the socks, and the hat, the shirt, and the collar, the clip-on collar.
Which
that
was
came.
painful,
That was
right?
painful. That came from a company that deals with article clerks, solicitors in courts, where they have to wear that stiff upper collar. So we had everything. And of course, I had a 1930s men's suit, which was perfectly suitable for the 1930s scenes that we shot, which you can see just here. So that worked out really well. I was absolutely pleased with the stuff that I was able to put together. And of course, at Ursula's end, she was able to put together a 1920-30s women's outfits for the occasion.
That was a lot of fun to do. Although I did have the itchy wool coat and the itchy wool hats
But you
and all
loved
of
it.
that stuff, but it was fun. And just get all those great shots that Jason got of us walking, especially through all the misty
Oh, it was marvellous.
scenes in the forest.
But
And
what fantastic locations we went to, didn't we?
just magical.
I mean,
Magical.
I was, when I saw the quality of what had been filmed and where we had gone to, plus I would say a superb presentation by Ursula and myself. I know it sounds like I'm blowing my own trumpet, but I was really pleased with my presentation on this because there was a lot to remember, and to be able to relate that to camera is not an easy task, is it, from memory?
No, we were just talking about this, and I think the essential part of that is that we were both so passionate about the subject matter. And we had learned so much about M.R.James and about his stories and about these locations, and it was such a joy and pleasure for us to talk about it. But we had so much information that we had learned because of our passion for the subject. And so it was just, it all
came together.
It really
It all
did.
came together,
It
yeah.
all did.
So the overall end product, we think, is something which is very high quality, and it's certainly very informative. It touches on his beliefs in the paranormal, and we've also given examples of where he had what we believe to be paranormal experiences. it's nice to think that even after all the years, we go back to the 60s and 70s with the two shows that we focused on, which was Whistle When I Come to You and A Warning to the Curious. Both of those shows and the locations they were shot in, they haven't changed. Yeah. They were still very much in being as they were then. So we were really pleased that we were able to replicate the landscape that was seen through the eyes of people like Jonathan Miller, for example, in 1968 with Whistle When I Come to You. I mean, a black and white production which was, I think, suitable, perfectly suitable for the occasion. And then Lawrence Gordon Clark in 1971 with A Warning to the Curious, and that was amazing, wasn't it?
It was amazing. I have to say, I think the viewers are going to be astounded, though, by the cinematography of this documentary. Jason Figgis has really captured the beauty and all the color and everything of the
visually, yes, he's really put the whole thing together. Yeah,
it's just it's so rich and so beautiful and so vast, and it's just so beautiful to look at.
And we were able to visit some, as we mentioned, the natural landscape, but we were able to see some of the places that M.R.James had actually recorded in his writings. And all of these places are still there. The only thing that was missing, sadly, was that Aldborough Railway Station disappeared years ago.
Right.
Yeah, but part of the line still exists. It runs to the nuclear power station nearby, but it does not obviously run through the town anymore. So the history there we've recreated, and hopefully when you see this production, which will be appearing soon, you will be as enthralled and as happy as we are with our achievements here. I'm tremendously pleased with what we were able to cover in such a short span of time. And let's not forget the other cast members involved here. Jerry Hughes, a voice artist, provided the voice of M.R.James, and he, although nobody's captured M.R.James's voice, he was able to project that kind of, he gave the impression of a crusty old academic from that period, and Jerry did it perfectly. And let's not forget, of course, Eddie Mallett, who provided the character of Mr. Ager. So it all came together. It all came together on a wish. But it's finished with something a lot more substantial. And we hope it will be a production which will be enjoyed for years to come. And as a result of that production, we are now looking at further productions together. Next one we're hoping to do will be a fictionalised account. In fact, we are going to shoot a ghost story. And that is also going to be involving actors dressed in period costume, hopefully in period vehicles, and in period locations. And I think that's the important thing. I think attention to detail is incredibly important. If you're going to project, for example, as I did, the Edwardian gentleman, it all has to look absolutely right. You know, if there's anything there, for example, say, for example, the jacket wasn't quite right for that period, or the trousers weren't quite right, in my eyes, the lack of detail there would have ruined it. So it's authenticity of detail which is crucial to making it successful.
Right,
and the recreation of the 30s character with the baggy trousers walking along the beach came together really, really well. And it was just an amazing experience. So that basically is the premise. We are focusing on whether or not M.R.James believed in the paranormal, and giving reasons why we believe that he did believe, and also sharing the insights to two great minds in the form of Jonathan Miller and, of course, in the form of Lawrence Gordon Clark for their productions involving M.R.James's wonderful writings. So look forward to seeing The Haunting of M.R.James coming very, very soon. And I hope that you will enjoy it as much as we've enjoyed making it.
We certainly
Any
will.
last thoughts before we say goodnight?
I'm just thrilled. I can't wait for everyone to watch it and to see what we've made. I think it's really something special.
It was, wasn't it? I loved it. And thank you